The opinions, views, and conclusions expressed in this show are those of the show host and co-host and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of KPFV FM or its affiliates.
KPFV LP 98.1 FM presents Changing the Planet One Mind at a Time every Thursday, 1 p.m. with your host, Gail Gaia. Good afternoon. This is Gail of Gaia, and we have a very special guest that will be calling in shortly, and we're going to talk about his journey. That is a spiritual one, and that also has an aspect about our current realm. But I'm going to let him explain that to you and have him tell you about his spiritual journey and his journey that has brought him to many of the conclusions that he has come to. And Doug, are you on the line now?
Yes, I am.
Well, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing fine. I'm just finishing up a cassava melon.
All right. Well, I just introduced you, and I don't know if I did justice to it. So I used to hate this question at job interviews. Well, tell us about yourself. But we have we have a listening audience here who may not know, what your background is or anything like that. So why don't you go ahead and explain it? And I would like you to tell us your story about going to India, and then we'll get on to the rest of the story.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, first and foremost, I'm a fruitarian.
Oh,
That's more important than anything else. I'm telling you right now, because I wouldn't be here if I hadn't found that out. But anyway, all right.
That's very interesting, and we can cover more on that a little bit later, because I know exactly why you do what you do, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, it's a little off topic. But
yeah.
Anyway, my background is primarily finance and real estate. I was in the mortgage business.
That's an interesting place to be, huh?
It is very. I don't miss it at all. Back when I was
small wonder.
I first got involved, it was entirely different. It was 1986 when I first started in the business, and it was mortgage banking was still a relatively new business to be in. It wasn't computerized. It was still using typewriters. The company I worked for, a Hammond company, was one of the first that went to computerized systems. So I got involved in IT as a result of becoming a mortgage broker. I left Hammond, became a mortgage broker. You have to kind of learn computers if you're brokering loans. Mm-hmm. It was all converting over. It was converted over by, say, the early 90s. I took some time off in the mid 90s and decided to try the the finance advisor industry. Mm-hmm. So I went to work for A.G. Edwards, so I had to get a Series 6 and a Series 7 and all the insurance licenses, and I've had pretty much every license that there is.
Uh-huh. I bet you don't have any of those right now, do you?
Oh, no. It's been a long time since I've had any kind of license. 2005 is the last time I had a driver's license. But
well, you're going to have to explain that to our audience, because they're going to say, what?
Well, yeah, a license is a license to break the law, period. If you don't have one, you can't possibly break the law. It's impossible. Anyway, so the mortgage industry consumed me. I went from I worked for A.G. Edwards for 2 years, left and went back into the mortgage business after it started to pick up. Those 2 years, 94, 95, the market, the Fed had raised rates, market just dropped off the face of the earth. A lot of people left the industry, and I did. But I came back in 96, and at that point I started working more with builders. So I could see what was going on, all the new construction, and what the builders did. They realized in the beginning they would release 30 or 40 homes because they'd have these large parcels, and they're going to build, say, 800 to 1,000 homes. They need to release that many. But as land got more valuable and there was less of it, they couldn't build big subdivisions like that anymore. It just wasn't cost effective. In Napa, they were all small parcels. So Napa is where I was based, in the city of Napa.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah. So the builders figured out that if they only released 5 or 6 homes at a pop, they could raise the prices far more and get far more for the home. So that's what they started doing. All the builders, they would only release 5 or 6 homes. So you'd have 100 people or more that want 5 homes. So what does that do? That creates false demand. It creates false demand because there were loans out there that people didn't have to really qualify income-wise. And towards the end, around 2003, I believe, they started coming out with these loans called ninja loans, where you didn't even have to have, that's no income, no jobs, no assets. No assets.
Wow.
So, yeah, they actually had loans like that. They predicated it on the credit score alone.
That sounds rather nefarious to me.
Well, let's face it. I mean, most of the listeners out there hopefully know, maybe they don't, that there is no such thing as a free market. Everything is rigged.
The whole system is rigged, right?
Of course it is.
Yes.
But there's a big part of it is that we're the reason that it exists. So it would be hard to rig something that didn't exist. We're the ones who partake in it, and if we partake, especially if we partake in it the wrong way, by misusing that name, which we will get into.
Yeah, we need to get into that because people are going, where's he coming from? I don't get it. There's a lot of people that don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, my background's important, though, because...
Yes, it is.
If I didn't know, if I didn't have the experience, I should say, of being in that mortgage business and the brokerage business, I wouldn't know that it was rigged.
Exactly.
But I saw it.
You saw it firsthand.
I was behind the scenes, seeing what's going on. That's one of the reasons I only stayed at A.G. Edwards for 2 years. I couldn't do the things that they were telling me I had to do.
Well, thank you for that, Doug. I can directly relate to that in the healthcare field, but that's another story. Keep going.
Okay. So ultimately, during this time, I had kind of ceased pretty much all activity, sports-related activities, which was kind of new for me, but it's not unusual. I had 2 boys, and a family. I got married in '89. So, but one of the things that happened in 1990, I got hurt racing mountain bikes, racing a mountain bike. I hurt my hip. Now that doesn't normally, cause too many problems, except for the fact that the cartilage had completely disintegrated. My diet was horrible, and I was working long hours,
stress,
sometimes 7 days a week. So what ended up happening, I ended up getting a divorce in 2003. 2004 is when it was finalized. 2005. Now I had everything anyone could want. I had more money than I needed saved. I had houses. I had cars. I had motorcycles. I had all the toys. So, but I was unhealthy. My hip, I could barely walk. And I had been taking medication for about almost 8 years, naproxen, as a means to keep the inflammation down on my hip. I had sciatic nerve pain for over 8 years.
Oh, that's a tough
and
one.
It towards the end, before I went to India and got it taken care of, it was so bad that I was taking 3 600 milligram tablets of naproxen. You're only supposed to take 1 a day.
Oh my!
So, ultimately, I had to stop taking that. I went through the divorce in a rental house by myself, with me and my dog. And one night, I had kind of I was tired of being in the loan business. Tired of doing loans. Tired of the pain. And I wanted out. And I was thinking of ways to off myself. So
that's sad.
It is sad. It's very sad. But I was in bad shape. My 50, and I'm just under 6 foot. I stopped eating. And I lost a lot of weight, but I still had the problem with my hip. But I felt better physically, but not mentally. So at that point, we're talking April of 2005. I prayed for the first time. And I didn't even know what I was praying to. I just said, if you're there, if there's someone listening.
Knock, knock.
If listening, I don't want to kill myself. I don't want to do anything like that. But I can't live this way. And if you will show me what I need to do in order to get rid of this pain, this 24-hour-a-day sciatic pain, so that I can get my life back, I'll do anything you tell me to do. Now that's something that I look back on now, and I was speaking from the heart. And I went to sleep shortly after that. It was at night. I was getting ready to go to sleep, and so a few days later, that was a Thursday, so Sunday, I had just mowed the lawn. My hip was killing me, and I sat down on the couch, turned the TV on, and took a couple of shots of tequila, because I was self-medicating at that point. I couldn't take naproxen anymore. Kaiser, by the way, was giving me all the naproxen I needed. All I had to do was call up and say, "Hey, I'm out. I need more," and they wouldn't even check with the doctor. They would just issue. If they did, the doctor would approve it. He claimed he didn't know he was surprised when he found out I was taking 3 a day. And so, in any event, the bottom line is my kidneys were starting to fail. Alcohol is not any better. So I'm sitting in front of the TV, and after I took a couple of shots on the TV, it said, coming up next on 60 Minutes, go to India, have your hip fixed, and have a vacation at the same time. So I thought I was hallucinating, but I wasn't. The next hour, that whole show, the entire hour, was devoted to medical tourism, which was relatively new back then, but now it's very, very common. People were doing it. It just wasn't talked about as much as it is now. And I had done some research on the internet, but I had never heard of what they were talking about. They were talking about a 34-year-old Canadian woman who got tired of waiting for this surgery up in Canada. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. They're telling me at 47 I'm too young to have my hip fixed, the total hip replacement. How is this 34-year-old woman getting her hip fixed? What are they doing? It wasn't a total hip replacement. It was what's called a BHR, Birmingham Hip Resurfacing, which was invented by Derek McMinn, a doctor, an orthopedic in Birmingham, United Kingdom. And the doctor that they had highlighted in India, his name was Dr. Bose, Vijay Bose, and he was, he was one of Dr. McMinn's proteges, one of the first surgeons that he trained in this procedure.
Okay.
So he had a lot of experience, and I'm sure this Canadian woman had done some research and found him. I had not even known about Birmingham Hip Resurfacing until I saw the show. So while I'm watching, I'm getting all excited.
I didn't know about it until you've told me, if you want to know the truth. I know a lot of people who have had hip replacements, but what you're talking about, I'm not familiar with. So that's interesting.
It's still relatively unknown, but there's a lot more on the internet about it. You can have it done here. Back then, when I went to the Kaiser doctor, ultimately what happened, I got a hold of Dr. Bose the next morning. I was too much tequila that night, so I couldn't go down to the office. I had no internet access. I was living in a house that didn't have internet access, and my phone didn't have good enough coverage either. So I had to wait till the next morning. I got up around 4, but I had taken all of the notes, Apollo Hospital, Chennai, Vijay Bose, found him in about 5 minutes, found his emailed him, called his phone number, and left a message on his phone. This was about maybe 4:35 in the morning. Mm-hmm. A couple hours later, I got a phone call, and it was Dr. Bose.
Wow. So I take it this was successful, too.
Oh, absolutely. So he calls me, and it's a 17-hour difference. So he's been working all day, and he's probably at home, and he got my message, and he's calling me. And he told me, he said, okay, I need to see your pictures, which are x-rays. So I told him, I said, yeah, I can get those. He wanted me to FedEx them. Well, I didn't FedEx them. I went to Kaiser, I got them, and I saw my doctor because they wanted me to wait 2 weeks to get a copy. And I said, no, there's some upstairs in the doctor's office. And she said, well, that's our copy. And I said, yeah, and you have a master, so you can make another copy for yourself. I want those. And I need them now. So finally he comes down because every 5 minutes I was going up to the counter asking him if they had called and I can't even remember his name.
Persistence pays off sometimes.
Yeah. And so he came down with the X-rays, and he said, "What do you want?" He was mad. "What do you want these for?" And I'm grinning ear to ear. I said, "I'm going to India. I'm going to get my hip fixed. You guys can't fix me." And I was paying $1,500 a month for insurance back then because I was self-employed.
Oh my gosh!
And and my son had a pre-existing condition. When he was 7 years old, he had a vaccine that had live streptococcal bacteria in it. It destroyed it ultimately caused him to need a kidney transplant. He didn't get that till 2012, but this was back in 1997. First grade, he got a vaccine. So anyone out there, vaccines, there's no benefit to any vaccine, period.
I post that all the time, Doug. I do, because I call it the medical hoax of the century.
It is. It is. So, and we're paying for it.
Boy, are we paying for it. People don't realize all the problems that those things cause. In fact, I just posted an article showing the difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated children, and it's phenomenal. One of the first studies that really point out the differences. And I also have a vaccine-injured son that received a double vaccination when he was around 18 months old, and it has affected him in a number of ways.
Well, this was the MMR. This was the MMR that had the strep in it.
Wow.
So that your listeners, just
pay attention.
Yeah, they need to know. Send this home. You cannot allow anyone that is, if you care about them, to have a vaccine.
One of the things with pediatricians, I don't know if you're probably aware of this, Doug, because I know you keep up on these things, but the doctor's office for every fully vaccinated child at 18 or months or 2 years, they get like $400 from the insurance companies. So if you have, 100, 1,000 children in your practice and they're fully vaccinated, that adds up to quite a bit of money. So are they really interested in your child's health, or are they interested in the money? I hate to tell you which one I think it is.
Well, yeah, obviously. Mm-hmm. It's all about money. If you're an MD and you've gone to school all those years, in your mind, you have to make money in order to justify that. Nobody's going to tell you that was a waste of money to go to medical school, but it was. Same thing with attorneys.
Because where does the conscience come in?
Yeah, exactly. That's commerce. Yeah. This is all about business. It's all about commerce. So,
and profit is the motivating factor.
Of course, that's the incentive. So so I ended up 3 weeks later on a plane. I got my visa. I got the tickets, the visa, all that stuff. And doctor, by the way, the pictures, the X-rays, I just held them up to the sun with a camera, a good camera, and I took pictures and emailed them to him.
Good.
That
I was thinking they could scan them too, for that matter. Or they put stuff on CDs now, but maybe they weren't doing that at that day and age.
They could probably nowadays. Yeah. Back then, I don't know. But anyway, they came across good enough for him to see, and he said, "You're a good candidate. When do you want to come?" And I said, "Now, as soon as possible." So this all happened June 4th. That's when I had the surgery, 2005, and for the first time in over 8 years, I was pain free. And I cried when I woke up. It was like 1 a.m. I woke up from the surgery about 3 p.m. because the surgery was scheduled for the morning. And the drain plug, the drain hose rather, had gotten plugged up. my blood it clots real easily. And, I have AB negative blood, by the way, which is rare. It's a rare blood. A lot of red-haired people have AB negative blood. I don't know if you...
I got A negative. Yeah.
A negative. Okay. So I don't have red hair, but I've got AB negative blood, which is, I think it's 0.06%. It's less than 1% of the population.
Yeah, that is the rarest. Yours is the rarest. A is not
rare.
quite, A negative by itself is not quite, but negative in general is only 15% of the population.
Exactly. So
people tell me I'm an alien. Anyway.
Well, I'm definitely not like the vast majority.
I'm not your average, something.
Yeah, most people just shake their head. And the way I tell people, I say, you should be doing what I'm doing. I don't expect you to, but somebody has to.
Exactly.
Somebody has to do it. Otherwise, we'll never know. We'll forever, and they're counting on that.
And
they're counting on people being afraid
and staying ignorant.
Well, and even if they find this out, I'm not going to tell people that they should go do this. That's something they've got to decide to do. And,
exactly.
And of course, you've got to set aside any kind of materialistic beliefs, because in the process of learning, I've lost property, but it's not a big deal. It's not like it's not that I don't care. It's that if I learned something from it, then it was well spent. And in the end, then if I find the answer and I can help other people, ultimately it all comes back 1,000-fold.
Exactly.
So I believe, I truly, well, it's not that I believe, I know this. This is something that I know in my heart, because I've had confirmation after confirmation. Time and again, I get these confirmations. Even today, I'm working on this motorhome. It's got some roof leaks, so I'm going up to Oregon. I got to make sure it's watertight. So the back corner, I spent probably a good hour trying to figure out how to fix this thing. And then I just let it go. And then it came to me like 2 days later how to do it. So these things that you have to listen to your heart. So when I made that pact with the Creator, and they held up their end of the deal, whoever it was that was behind that, now it's my job. He, she, it, whatever it was that directed me to India and got rid of that pain, I got my life back. But what I was telling you is, in the afternoon, I woke up at like 3 p.m. after the surgery, and I was in pain. I was screaming. Mm-hmm. Dr. Bose, they got Dr. Bose. He came over immediately. He happened to be close, and he saw the problem. So he said, I'm gonna put you out again, and I'm gonna give you a blood thinner, and you won't have that problem. You'll wake up pain-free. And I did. It was like 1 a.m, though. I was in my room, and it was dark, and I was looking out into the hallway, and there was a Buddha-like
isn't that interesting?
statue that had lights on it,
uh-huh.
and it was in a glass case, and I had never noticed it before because the door was always closed.
Uh-huh.
So they had the door propped open, and that's the first thing I saw when I woke up. I'm like, wow, where am I? I didn't know where I was. And I'm looking at this gold leaf Buddha-looking thing and wondering where I'm at. Then it occurred to me, wait a minute, I'm in India. And I had my surgery, and I don't feel any pain. I thought I was dreaming.
Miracles
So
do
I'm
happen,
pinching
huh?
Yeah,
What
so-
did they call this surgery again, so people know? Because it's not something that's offered here, or certainly not a first.
The acronym is BHR, and it stands for Birmingham Hip Resurfacing. So they're resurfacing the hip as opposed to replacing it. When you get a hip replacement, you lose about a foot. Well, it depends how big you are, but you lose a significant amount of your femur, the top portion of your femur. About a third of it
That's a lot.
is gone. They just cut it, and then they drill a hole down the center of the stock, and they put a stem in there. Titanium stem is usually what they use. And the problem with total hip replacements is you cannot be active afterwards. You got to be careful. You got to be amped in.
Yes, I've known a number of people who have had hip replacements, and some of them work fine, and then I've known others too that had one infection after another too. So it's really not the best answer, and it's nice that people who are listening may find out that there is another way.
Yes. Well, the reason they wanted me to wait till I was 60, that happened to be a good omen, because once you have a total hip replacement, you cannot have a BHR. It's impossible.
Oh, lovely.
Because they've cut the bone off.
Uh-huh.
So what the BHR does is it preserves all that bone, and you're just capping the end of it.
Wow.
The one I have is metal on metal, and there are people that have reactions to the metal.
Mm-hmm.
It's made out of, this particular one's made out of cobalt chromium, and it weighs about 4 pounds. So it's heavy, but I'll never have to have it replaced. Total hip replacements only last on average 8 to 10 years.
Interesting.
So when they go bad, what do? They got to go back in there, and you're 10 years older. So it's not a good thing. It's not good at all. So the BHR is, if it's done properly, and I caution people against having it done here without doing research, because there's a ton of doctors that have no clue what they're doing. And I know lots of people trying to save money by using their insurance and having it done here rather than going. Now I should correct myself. There are actually some doctors here. There's a Dr. Sue in New York. I know was trained by Dr. McMinn and Dr. Bose.
So those are some hints.
Handful.
There's some hints there for people. Once you do some research, which you should do before you have anything like this done, to look for someone that's been trained from one of the East Indian experts on this.
Or Dr. McMinn, the inventor.
Okay.
He's still around. He's in.
Are we
Birmingham.
talking Venice, California? Venice where?
No. He's in Birmingham, UK.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, of course, some people are going to think, oh, well, I can't afford to go overseas to have this done, that kind of thing. So,
no, there's doctors that do it here. There's one at UCLA. I can't remember his name. He calls himself the king of resurfacing, but he's probably fine. You just need to do research. So obviously I lucked out. I did zero research. I did zero research, and that's not like me.
Uh-huh.
But what happened to me, it was such a clear case that this is a higher power. This is the ascended masters telling me, here's where you're going to go. You're going to go to India, and you're going to see this doctor. He's going to fix you, and then you're going to do work for us.
There you go. That's funny because I know of another guy who happens to be a doctor, Dr. Scott Warner, who has had similar experience with ascended masters, and he's doing that exactly the same type of thing that you're doing by trying to enlighten others about not only this hip situation, but I think I'd like us to get into some of the other stuff that you're aware of in the legal realm or so-called legal realm, the illusion that you refer to and all that, because we're going to run out of time if we don't get to that too. Okay.
So we're now at the point that you have a foundational knowledge of my background. Now I'm better. I can start driving my car. This is July, and it's my birthday, July 15th. I get pulled over. Now, back then, I had a driver's license, registered the cars I had, the motorcycle, everything was registered, driver's license. The only thing that I had stopped doing is paying taxes. I had a bad experience in 1996 with respect to a tax return. It was actually an older tax return. It was from 91, 92. Mm-hmm. I fought it. I lost. And so I decided at that point, I'm gonna stop paying taxes. There's something wrong with this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And since I was self-employed, I was getting paid right out of escrow. I could do that. And nobody could stop me from doing that.
Do you think that's why they stopped your car or what?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, because there was no connection there at all.
Okay. I was just wondering.
Me because, I was going downtown. I remembered it was Friday, and I saw there were a bunch of cars downtown. Back then they had this thing called the Chef's Market. So I whipped a U-turn. I said, I'm not going to go downtown and get something to eat. I'm just going to go home. I'll eat something at home. So I flipped a U-turn, and a cop was about 200 yards away towards the direction I was going, saw me flip the U-turn, thought that I saw him, and decided to pull a U-turn to avoid him. So he puts his lights on and comes after me, pulls me over, and proceeds to ask me if I've been drinking. I said, no, I'm smiling at him. No, I haven't. I haven't had a drink since I got back from India. Don't need it anymore. And so he's asking me all these questions. I gave him the driver's license, registration, insurance, all that. He wants me to get out of the car. He'd asked me, how many beers have you had? I haven't had any beer. He asked me to get out, so I get out, and I limp around to the back of the car, and he's trying to get me to do the what do you call the sobriety test?
Sobriety test, yeah.
So I said, I can't do that. I just had surgery, but I'll blow into your breathalyzer thing. I can do that. So he's all excited. Oh, okay, because I'm volunteering. Uh-huh. He went and got it, and I blew 3 times. They were 0 every time.
Yeah.
I knew they were 0. I only saw it once. He didn't show me the other 2 times, but it was pretty obvious just by his reaction. So he's got a ride along. He doesn't like the fact that I'm smiling and I'm happy, apparently. And he's going to take you to jail anyway. So.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. Got taken to jail. Was because that I refused the sobriety field test. Oh. And I said, it's not refuse it. I can't. I can't.
Well, for heaven's sakes, you just had hip surgery. How are you supposed to do that?
Well, yeah, and my left leg, the one that had the surgery, that entire leg had atrophied. It was about a third of the size of my other leg.
want you, their victim, to be able to make their quota, you know, so they don't want to make the stop useless.
So they ultimately, I refused to give blood because that's what they wanted. They threatened to throw me on the ground, lift me up and throw me on the ground and get the blood that way. I was terrified. I'd never even been arrested before. And
they have no conscience.
So I went ahead and gave the blood, and they said it came back at 0.10. This is like a week later.
What?
At that point, 0.10. So now I want to get a sample of that blood. And so I got an attorney. He said, we can't get it until after the trial is over.
What?
And I said, oh yeah, this is in line with what happens to people when they misuse that name. This was happening to me. Ultimately, because I refused, they took the driver's license. That was the best thing that ever happened to me.
I had a similar experience.
Outside of getting my hip fixed. So they took it, and when I found out, hey, you can't get a sample of that blood, I told the attorney, I know that's not my blood.
It couldn't be.
So when this case is over, I'm going to get that blood sampled, and I'm going to get them to expunge this. When the case was over, the DMV has a hearing, right? He had promised me I was going to get my driver's license back. Like back then I thought I needed it.
Uh-huh. Well, most people do.
They think they do.
Exactly. Well, they're told that they have to. And sometimes they're arrested and thrown in jail if they don't. So.
Right. So what ended up happening, the DMV hearing said your license is suspended for a year because you refused. See, the cop sent to the DMV, he checked the box that said refused to give a blood test or a breath test.
But you did give it.
I did. And so I told the attorney that. I said I did give it. In fact, I pled guilty because I didn't want to go into a court and risk, how they scare you. Yeah, you can get 10 years, blah, 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 blah. Now I know that was all a bluff.
Yeah.
If I had that same situation today, it would have been dropped. Guaranteed. They had nothing. They needed me to admit guilt. They had nothing. So the bottom line is that blood was not my blood. I know it wasn't my blood. But when you're afraid and you don't know what you're doing, which I didn't, you do things like that. You take a plea. So it was after I took the plea that he said, oh, by the way, you're not getting your license back. And I said, well, then I changed my plea. Oh, no, you can't do that.
Of course not. Yeah.
And so, but that ended up being fine. I thought about it, and I said, maybe this is meant to be. Maybe it is that I don't need that frickin' license. So, anyway, so that got taken away from me roughly 3 weeks after I got back from India.
Interesting.
And that was the start of
your
journey that I'm on. So it wasn't until 2013 that I heard someone talking about the DBA, and I started to focus on that. Her name was Colleen Devine. That's the legal name that she claims to use. And she was talking about the Texas assumed name certificate. At the time, I was aware of the fictitious business name statement in California.
Uh-huh.
So I'm all excited because I'm reading the legislation in the Business and Professions Code, 17900 of the Business and Professions Code, And I realized, wow, any name that's used to transact business in this state for a profit, and anytime you see that term in this state, they're not talking about in California. They're talking about in the United States. So the State Department is the United States Department. But when they talk about in this state, they're talking about United States. All the states. Because they are just one. Even though they make it look like, oh, there's all these subdivisions, and that's just because it makes it easier for them to manage. And it also is a web when it comes to dealing with attorneys and these different levels and different departments of the courts, because the courts are what they use to enforce those laws. So it took me a long time to realize this, but all laws apply to persons.
I guess we better define person, because some people don't realize what person actually means.
Right. It's anything but a man or a woman. Anything that is an entity that is being termed a person in commerce, in the legislation, in the law, in the code, that person is either an individual, a corporation, a partnership, an LLC, a limited liability corporation, limited liability partnership. There's several different categories. But the first one I mentioned, individual. Why is that word, that term, individual, used along with corporation? Obviously, it's not a corporation because it's different than a corporation. An individual, though, is the same in that it's a fictional character. It's a legal fiction. They created the individual that's on a certificate of live birth. You can call it a birth certificate, but when you get it, it's going to say certificate of live birth on there. So what is a live birth? It's the expulsion of a product. That's what, if you look up what that means in their jargon, it's the expulsion of a product that may or may not have a heartbeat. And they're not talking about a stillborn child. When they talk about a product, that's where people get the impression, though, that there's a value, like a commodity value, that's applied to body. Well, there is in slavery, but slavery's not legal, remember?
They have a way of getting around it, though, don't they?
Is the involuntary bondage. You can voluntarily tie yourself down and be in bondage voluntarily, and it's not illegal. Nothing's illegal as long as the person volunteers. Can a person actually volunteer, though? A person is a thing. It cannot act. To volunteer, that's a verb, that's an action. So you can volunteer as a woman, I can volunteer as a man, but a thing cannot volunteer. It needs either an agent, or in the case where I'm talking about registering the name using the assumed name certificate from the state of Minnesota, that individual is registering, and the name holder is the man or woman that controls that name. So in other words, they're giving that name to you, the first and last name. They're handing it to you. And it's on a piece of paper, which, by the way, normally they put it on the security paper and the fancy border on it. And but I noticed that if you go to Florida's Department of Health, they issue the birth certificates. You can get one with a beach scene. no security paper on it at all. And it's still a certificate of live birth.
Interesting.
I've never seen anything like that. It's kind of like getting a vanity license plate. They charge you money for this, but why would you want a birth certificate with a beach scene?
I
Doesn't
have no
that
idea.
kind of it lowers, in my mind, it lowers the value of that, whatever, it's not on security paper anymore. So see, a lot of people think there's money in that. It looks like it's on security paper. Wow, there's got to be money. That's worth money. It's a bond. Well, no, it's not a bond. It's just a piece of paper with a name on it. That name is your token. That's your game piece. And what they're doing is they're taking the proper name, which is always the surname, which always comes first. First name comes first for the entity that they create. But when they're referring to who you are, where did you come from? That the chicken didn't come before the egg. So you got that name from your father. You inherit that. So that comes first. The comma is a break. The given name is given to you by mom and dad so that someone can get your attention. Like your mom and dad. Hey, Doug, over here. Follow us. So the surname, comma, given name is the name holder. The first and last name, middle names don't matter. First and last is what matters. And there cannot be any commas in a first and last name.
And it's usually all capitalized as well.
Well, the all caps is, you will not find anywhere where they refer to the all caps name meaning something. Nowhere. But you will note that when, especially if that person's in trouble and you get something in the mail, it's almost 99.9% of the time, it's going to be all caps.
Yes.
And if they're sending you a renewal notice for your driver's license, it might be upper and lowercase. Whatever. They interchange the two of them. Whenever you use all caps, it jumps out at you, though. And so from a commercial standpoint, if you're a marketer, you want to use all caps because it gets their attention. That's why they use it. That's in my opinion, because you will not find anywhere in any law where under definitions it says it must be all caps.
Mm-hmm.
But, like I said, it gets your attention. And
it's usually used in a nefarious way, trying to get you to claim that to be you when it's not you.
Exactly. The certificate of live birth is upper and lower case. Okay, but it's not registered yet. So when you register that name, use all caps. That's where the name came from. It originated. You want to find the answer to anything, go back to the origin. So you go back to the origin of that name. Who originated it? The state. So when you register anything with the state, you're actually telling the whole world the state owns whatever it is that you register. Okay, that includes the name, that includes the vehicle. So this is why they call a vehicle registration fee a use tax. They don't call it a registration fee on their forms. It says use tax. What are you using? You're using the vehicle that they
own,
that you gave to them, that you registered and gave to them.
But sometimes people end up doing this under duress, because even if you know some of this stuff, if you don't do it,
Sure.
They take it away from you. And
Absolutely. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it the law, but they're categorizing everyone into that they're putting everyone in that same
it's deception.
bowl of fruit.
Yeah, it's deception.
they're trained to do the things that they're doing. They don't know. This is still too new. You know, there's other people that have done this. I know that. I'm not the only one that knows this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know it too, but it's difficult to get
But
across.
But I'm saying, going back to 2013, I discovered someone named Colleen that was registering the name. I tried to do it. In California, they refused to take the $35.
Interesting.
They refused. That's a clue that, you know, hey, the government always takes your money. That's their job. What do you mean you don't want my $35 to file an assumed, or it's a fictitious business name statement? It's not a license. It's not a permit. It's just a statement saying that this person here, this first and last name, is the business, and I'm the one that controls it. And it said registered owner at the bottom where you sign. Well, I crossed out the registered owner part, and I just put agent. They didn't like that.
I bet.
They said, you've altered our form. That's a felony, blah, 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 blah. I said, there's no, the legislation is this way. Your form doesn't follow the legislation. It's asking for what is the nature of your business, and you're asking a different question. This business is conducted by. It's number 4 on that form. And I don't want to spend too much time on that, but that's something the Secretary of State is aware of, the fact that the forms that the counties are using are not in compliance with the Business and Professions Code. They don't follow the form that they actually have in the legislation. So, in any event, the fact is, I tried literally every county I called, and I talked to the county clerk or the assistant county clerk. Many times in these counties like Placer County, Yuba County, Shasta County, I actually talked to the clerk, to the county clerk, and they told me just point blank, you cannot alter the form. I brought it to their attention. This form is not in compliance. They did not respond. So the counties, they have these, there's a league of cities, there's a league of counties too. They all talk to each other. They all use essentially the same forms for this. In Orange County, when you walk into the county clerk, on the right side, it's all the stuff for real estate transactions, deeds, recordings, that type of stuff. On the left-hand side, fictitious business name. So it's a big business for them. They take in a lot of revenue, but what is the purpose of that? What is the reason for a DBA? They claim that it's so that you know who you're doing business with. But do you really know who you're doing business with, and is that the real reason? See, it's not the real reason. The real reason is because if you get sued or you want to sue using that name, the person, that first and last name, you will not be able to maintain that name in a court action, which means you cannot defend it, nor can it sue any other person. Period. So this is the nexus of their whole system. It's all predicated on us believing that first and last name is us. And of course, why would you register the first and last name as a business if it's you? Right? Are you a business? No. You're not a business. You can work for a business, or you can control a business. But you cannot be an employee. If you name yourself as an employee, you're in trouble already. So let's say that you want to work at Walmart. When you fill out that W-4, it's asking for a first and last name. That first and last name is a business entity. Does that business have any tax obligation? Income tax. Well, according to the IRS, if it's a sole proprietorship, it's tax exempt. So this entity has no tax obligation whatsoever because it's a sole proprietorship. If you look at the definition, though, the IRS says, however, the sole proprietor may have a personal tax liability. So there's no business tax liability. There might be a personal income tax liability. That's where the 1040 comes in. So does that registered person have a sole proprietor that has personal income? Well, who is the sole proprietor? Mm-hmm. Well, it's not me. The sole proprietor is the legal name. Who created that? State. So the state is the sole proprietor, essentially. It's not me. I'm not the sole proprietor.
You know
the
what?
sole proprietor is an entity. Does that?
I'm going to need you to sum this up, Doug, for now, because we're running out of time because we got another show or program coming up. But I tell you what I would like to do is, because we got a late start, what we could do is do another session at another time as a follow-up to this one.
Sure. That's fine. That's fine.
Because I think we're just getting into the meat of the subject and we kind of have to bring it to a close, and I apologize for that, but we can fix it.
I was a half hour late. There's no way I could have done it at 1 o'clock anyway. 1:30 was what I had planned on, and so I apologize. That's my fault. I had the time wrong.
It's all good. We'll fix it. No big deal. We'll just finish. We'll just do this or finish up on it because it's fascinating and it's very important information that people need to know because very few people know this.
That's correct.
The more people that know it, the better.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll provide you, if you don't already have it, a link. If people want to know where they can go and read the paper that I wrote, I didn't really talk about that. I wrote the paper originally in 2014. First found Minnesota as the place to register.
Yes, please do provide all that. I probably have it somewhere, but it'll be easier. And when we write up this session, I'll make sure it gets put on the description of what we're talking about. And then we'll follow up and we'll do it again with the rest of the story.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
We can even do that pre-recorded too, for that matter, if it's easier for you. So,
it might be, yeah.
Okay. So I'm afraid we have to close for now, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this. And I definitely will be talking to you again so we can finish it up and get all the information out there so more people are aware of what's really going on.
You bet, Gail. Pleasure is mine.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you, audience, and we'll be back next week. Thank you.
You're listening to your local radio.
98.1 FM, KPFB LP, Pahrumps Freedom Radio.